please do keep introducing yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're from, and then also, feel free to share anything that resonated from last week. I am Devin Vidichka. I'm the CEO, co-CEO of Learner Centered Collaborative, and we have a tremendous session planned for you here today. I'm so thrilled to be joined by two of my colleagues. We have Benji Walker, who's the incredible principal of Vista Academy in Vista, California. Good morning, Benji.
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
And I'm also joined by my longtime colleague, Katina Hancock, who's now with us at Learner Centered Collaborative. Good morning, Katina.
Good morning, all. Welcome.
And we also have Brittany Griffin, who's our co-host, also with us from Learner Centered Collaborative. So we are going to jump right into it. We have a lot of exciting things to share, and I want to start with just some framing. And at Learner Centered Collaborative, we're a national nonprofit. We have a vision for the future of education ecosystems where all learners know who they are, thrive in community, and actively engage in the world as their best selves. And it's this broader view of success that we want to orient to as we are engaging in this series of conversations around school design. This is the second of our four-part series. Last week, we were joined by two incredible leaders who shared their story and really talked about the why of learner-centered school redesign. Today, we're going to be talking about mapping your ecosystem and thinking about the big moves that help in that redesign process. Next week, we're going to get into designing for change, and then we will be culminating with moving into plans and next steps. In terms of outcomes, we have some very practical outcomes, what you'll have at the end of the series. The first of those is a documented vision of redesign. The second is an understanding of assets, and we want to take a strengths-based approach into the design process. And then the third, getting into that plan, is a series of identified next steps so that you can convert these ideas into meaningful action that help us to move brighter vision for the future. And especially, we want you to feel connected, like you're part of a community. We'll be putting you into breakout rooms and providing opportunities for you to collaborate with other participants. We encourage you to use the chat extensively. And throughout, we hope that you feel like your questions, your ideas, your perspectives are valued, and that you're also contributing to this series of community conversations. At Learner Centered Collaborative, we organize our partnerships and our work around this learner-centered ecosystem framework. And I think we've shared with you the white paper that co-founder, co-CEO, Dr. Katie Martin published a few weeks ago. It's an excellent resource, and we'll be using it throughout this series. But it's based on this ecological framework from Bronfenbrenner, and it resonates deeply with this idea of ecosystems and how things are deeply connected. But we want to be thinking about the interconnections between whole learner outcomes, the learning model, so what are the learning experiences of students, the school design principles, and that's really our focus for this series, and also the enabling conditions. What are we doing to support those school design principles to implement those learning experiences that will help us achieve those whole learner outcomes? And then encompassing all of this, of course, is culture, how we interact with one another, our mindsets, our levels of relational trust, our sense of collective efficacy. In the area of school design, we have, through our work with many school systems across the country, and also the work that we did prior to Learner Centered Collaborative, we've identified these elements of school design, which we see in many different communities, and they're expressed in unique ways. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this webinar series, is it gives us an opportunity to look at different models, different approaches that all incorporate and encompass these school design elements. And at the center of it is a clear identity. Who are we and what are we trying to achieve as a learning community? And you'll hear a strong focus on that as we listen to Katina and Benji tell the story of the journey at Vista Academy. But there are other elements as well. Small learning communities, something we see consistently across redesigned schools, an emphasis on real-world learning, a shift to performance assessment, strong systems and structures for teacher collaboration that are embedded and ongoing, and distributed leadership. There's no way that one person can do all of the things that it takes to sustain deep change over an extensive period of time. So as I mentioned last week, we heard the story of two redesign journeys. One was Dr. Eric Shigella from Vista Unified School District, where I was formerly the superintendent, worked with Katina and Benji and Eric there. And we heard from Eric about a fundamental transformation, taking Washington Middle School and redesigning the school into something new and different with a very ambitious set of changes, successful evolution, and 10 years into the journey, 11 years, I think now into the journey of VITA. We also heard from Brianna Norton, who is the principal at Hidden Valley School in Escondido Union School District. And they are about a year into their journey of implementing a micro school. And so earlier in the journey, and a different theory of change, going with sort of a school within a school, a micro school approach, but both of these very successful redesign efforts with a lot of common elements that connect back to those school design principles that are part of our ecosystem framework. And as we talk about school design today and kind of mapping your ecosystem and what's possible, we're going to be reorienting back to our school design principles and thinking about what are the big moves that you can take that will help you to shift the systems and structures of school so that we can implement different learning experiences to get to those whole learner outcomes. And you're going to hear some incredible examples today from both Katina and Benji, who will be sharing some of the things that they learned along the change journey at Vista Academy. Let's go to the next slide. One thing we want to remind you about as you listen to the stories of any of the panelists last week, this week, next week, and in the future is that learning and change, it's a process. It's not an event. You don't snap your fingers and instantly have change occur. And it is an iterative process that goes through these cycles. And so we like this visual a lot because what you see along the left is that what you want to hold firm on is your vision, your mission, your values, your outcomes, which is often expressed in a portrait of a learner, your learning model, which is, again, what are those learning experiences you want to see for students? All of that translates into concrete goals. How do you know if you're making progress in the direction of that desired future? And from there, there's an implementation process that requires collaboration. It requires trying some new and different things. It requires getting feedback, reflecting on that, analyzing the impact, and adjusting that strategy over a period of time. And at Vista Academy, when we started on this change journey back in 2012, things were quite different. And it's been a series of many, many different cycles of learning that have led to where things are today. And so as you listen to the journey, I hope you recognize that we're going to share things relatively quickly, but it took many, many of these cycles to iterate and learn together. All right. From there, I think I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Katina Hancock, who's going to share a little bit about Vista Academy of Visual and Performing Arts. And she's going to bring us back to 2012 when we started on this journey. So take it away, Katina.
Good morning, everybody. Again, I'm excited that you're here and excited to kind of co-present with Benji, who was a really trusted partner along this process. I just wanted to give a little bit of quick background. Vista Academy is the second oldest school in Vista Unified, harkens all the way back to 1950, where it was Santa Fe Elementary School. And it's on approximately 60 acres. So it's a very large footprint. It was reimagined in 1993 to be a visual and performing arts magnet program with the intention of bringing in families from outside of Vista Unified. It was well resourced. It had a multi-million-dollar budget. They were able to hire specialized staff. They grew to a spot where there was a ginormous wait list for enrollment as a magnet school. In the early 2000s, No Child Left Behind started, and we started to see some decrease in achievement, decreases in financial resources. There was staff turnover, and the school fell into program improvement year over year because although it was a really rich program that was meeting the whole child needs of kids, that wasn't necessarily showing up on a standardized assessment. In May 2012, every single penny that supported the magnet program was revoked. They lost the final kind of core families that were there that were like really adamant about keeping the visual and performing arts program moving forward. And then there was multiple changes in leadership. So it was not a fun time for that staff and that community. On Monday, August 13th, 2012, it was 1 week before school starts, and Devin and I happened to have lunch, and I was getting ready to actually go back into the classroom and teach. I had had my fun being a school principal, and I was ready to get back to the kid level, and Devin said, I just had a principal walk in and quit. Do you want the job? And at first I told him no, but then as I thought about it, and I thought about like where are some of my strengths, showed up the best. I was like, yeah, I think I can do this. And so I said yes to supporting 1,000+ kids. Our demographics were pretty high poverty, pretty high English language learner, high Hispanic population, and approximately 18% special ed. There was approximately 150 staff between classified and certificated. And just of note, on a campus this big, there was more than 20 entry and exit points on this campus that were all open around the school site. So you didn't really know who was on campus at any given point in time. We had walls falling down in kindergarten classrooms. This literally was one wall that melted right as the teacher was beginning to set up for the school year. The weeds were taller than some of our staff. There were holes, pipes, exposed pipes, piles of dirt, trash and debris and things just pushed into every nook and cranny. This is actually a piano that just fell down and nobody ever decided to remove it. Stained carpets, mold, trash, just really, you had a sense that the school had been neglected for a very long time. Exposed wiring in classrooms, you name it. So here I am, it's a week before school started. I just got hired and I'm walking around this campus with the custodian, and I kind of looked at him and I'm like, we can't open school. Like, we need to tell them that, we need a couple weeks before we welcome kids and families. So fortunately, I was hired by Devin, and I knew that this would be something that would be top of his priority list to solve for. So I called him up and said, you have to come over here. And sure enough, he was there pretty instantly. We talked about some different things that we thought could be possible to make some adjustments. And he called business services. And within probably hours, we had dozens upon dozens of maintenance, the field, grounds folks, other staff members from other school sites coming over. And after about 4 days, I still was at a place where there was still broken windows. There were things that just felt like it wasn't as warm and welcoming as I wanted it to be for kids, but it was at least safe enough that we could start to welcome families. So Devin came back 4 days later, and do you remember, Devin, how many times the trash company had to come and like empty the dumpsters?
I don't remember a specific number, but one thing I do want to mention is I was also a new superintendent at the time. I'd started in July, and so I had not been to the campus until Katina called me and said that I needed to come over and see it. And there are 30 schools in Vista, so I started in July. This, Katina was hired about middle of August. I had been trying to visit schools, but I had not made it to Vista Academy until she called. And yeah, I was by what we saw. And I don't remember the specific number of trash runs, but I know that this was an all hands on deck intervention. It was kind of like those home makeovers where you bring in every resource that you have to try to accomplish a lot of change in a short amount of time.
And I would say, you might be kind of wondering, like, well, why did the staff let that happen? And as I was walking with the custodial staff that first day and a half, eventually turned and asked them, I'm like, how did it get to the point where trash and weeds and like things just were left? And my custodian looked at me with like watery eyes and he said, when you ask for help and you don't get it, and when you see things day in and day out and you're unable to keep up and manage the change, it just becomes your normal. And so they did work really hard on certain aspects of keeping the campus, safe for kids, but they couldn't keep up. And when support was requested, it never showed up until, fortunately, Devin was hired, which was great. So the grounds, it was amazing to see the changes and the weeds being brought down and just the trash, being picked up. There's beautiful landscaping throughout this campus. And since it had been many years of a visual performing arts, there were murals and artifacts and just sculptures and installations of things that like started to surface and come to life. 4 years later, so again, back to Devin's point about this being a process and not a single event, we were fortunate after a lot of blood, sweat, tears, a lot of different emotional roller coaster rides. We were one of only 2 schools in the state of California to earn some of the highest distinctions. We were Title I High Academic Achievement, California Gold Ribbon, and Excellence in the Arts. And also within a couple months of that, we were officially authorized as an International Baccalaureate primary years program school. So this is our LCC process that we do to support a lot of schools and districts that are desirous of moving to a more learner-centered system. And where I didn't know that these elements were named these things back when I was doing this work, having worked so closely with Devin for a number of years, it was just kind of the natural flow of things. And so it's cool now to be in this position and say like, hey, I didn't know that was the exact right order and it works. So we started with vision, mission, and values. We defined what we called a learner profile, which was part of being International Baccalaureate. We had a specific learning model that was part of that program about being inquiry-based, authentic. We had a saying where we really felt that strongly that if we connected the head and the heart, then the hands could do. And so that was the premise of a lot of our instructional design. We talked about the big moves, what were we going to do starting in year 0 all the way up, for the next 3 to 5 years. So we started with the why, the what, the how, and the what's next. And I would also add here, one of the things that we were intentional about was this wasn't just Katina coming in and making a decision that the school was going to head in a particular direction. One of the challenges Devin posed to us and at the start of that school year was that he felt really strongly that students needed pathways in their schooling. And so we not only should a elementary school program be really solid, but what is the pathway into middle school and into high school? And so we had a MYP, a middle years program in the district already, and we had a diploma program at one of the high schools already. And so we pulled together a committee district-wide to talk about what should these pathways be. It was comprised of probably close to 100 people across the district, leadership teams from each school site, community members, all of the things. So this group was the one that decided at the end of that 2012-2013 school year that we were going to have 2 elementary PYP programs. We'd have the middle school MYP, and that we would build out the diploma program at Mission Vista. And so that was the charge to start in the 2013-2014 school year. Was we were going to be a visual and performing arts magnet school, and we were going to tackle the IB authorization process. And we kind of did it with, again, we didn't have these school design elements back when we were doing this work, but it was structures that we had to put in place to really think about how to move the system forward. And I would say in that year zero, it was probably one of the hardest parts of the work, because we had to go from being a K-8, quasi, we had still parts of the visual and performing arts, but not all the elements. Our middle school kids, their master schedule was such that every child, regardless of their achievement level, had to take a math remediation class in addition to their traditional math class. So they weren't having the same opportunities and being competitive going into the high school. So as part of this redesign work, we had to close the K-8. We were going to redesign as a K-5 and figure out how to start to put the structures in place. And so the first thing that we had to do was just stabilize. We had to make sure that we had folks feeling like they were supported, being transitioned into the other spaces if they were leaving our campus, that students and families knew what those programs were going to look like in terms of support for them. And then with the staff that was remaining, we really had to come together and go through the grief process. There was a lot of loss and a lot of closure that had to be managed and cared for. And then as we were able to acknowledge and recognize the loss, and even, learning from some of the positive things that had happened in that past journey, we pulled together our own then site-based committee, where we started to think about who are we, what do we stand for, how are we going to act, what are some of the core foundational pieces that we need to have in order to move our school forward. So a couple of the things that we did was, as part of being International Baccalaureate, we partnered with Cal State San Marcos, and every single one of our teachers enrolled in a 2-year certificate program. And we were fortunate that the district, in support of this redesign process, allocated significant financial resources for us. And so we were able to support all of our teachers in taking that certificate program. I actually was the teacher, so I would take the coursework first and then would go and meet with teachers during their collaboration time. They would do the coursework, we would have conversations. We work through the process of really thinking about what's our program of inquiry. So this is the foundational piece of what makes a school an IB school. And so in that first year, as we were all learning and really thinking about understanding by design and what each of our units should look like and how we had these through lines, they had to do a lot of learning and meaning making. We asked them to test things in small ways in their classrooms, and we only built one unit in that first year. So one approximately 6-week unit of study. In year 2, Benji, I can't remember, did we do 2 that second year or maybe 3 that second year?
I believe it was 3. So, and then the final 2 was that final year, which was our authorization year.
So it took us 3 years to build 6 units of study across every grade level, and then really think about what the refinement and alignment is from the, TK to 5. So this really supports that real world learning, and then performance assessments were embedded in each of those. And I would also say, in terms of the visual and performing arts aspect, one of the things that was really special about what we were able to do is every child had dance, drama, music, and art every week. And those specialist teachers that were highly skilled in their core area collaborated with the grade level teachers. And arts integration not only happened in the physical grade level classroom, but it happened in those arts spaces as well. So kids learn how to do coordinate planes by dancing them in the dance room. It was a really special opportunity for them to really think about whole body, whole brain learning. This is just a little bit of a deeper dive into a unit planner. this was pretty robust. We had teachers that were like, we have to tackle and do what? Like, there was a lot of thinking that had to happen in order to make this possible. And they really they dove in, and it was cool to see educators engage in high levels of collaboration. We actually came up with grade level budgets where I knew the team was going to need resources, and I didn't want to be the expert based on what they were designing, and so they knew that they had a certain amount of resources they could allocate to purchase materials. Could have been like consumables, to purchase things for field trips, anything that they thought would really enhance that unit of study for their students. I think the master schedule is a core, like foundational piece. Once you get really clear about your program design elements, you've got to create a structure that supports that and starts to bring it to life. And so again, we really wanted to make sure that we had collaboration that was embedded during the school day. We couldn't keep asking teachers to do things outside of their day or on the weekend. We wanted them to be able to collaborate regularly during their school day. So every week, teachers had approximately 90 minutes that they came together to do collaboration around their program of study, looking at data, talking about kids. And almost every grade level regrouping was happening in some way, depending on the unit of study that they were in. Teachers also had a block of just prep time. IB requires a little bit more intensive, like pulling of materials and resources. And so we also wanted to make sure that they had time during their workday to make sure they had what they needed day in and day out to engage in that learning. You'll see things here like we had a late start for our arts specialists. So again, we don't always want to ask people to do more. So instead of our art specialist teachers getting paid extra on the back end to do what we called a conservatory, which was like a small show choir, or we had like a theatrical group. We let them start late so that they could stay later and then have those extended learning opportunities for students that were more interested in going deeper into one area of the arts. You'll see one of the things over here says Santa Fe. We actually hosted, and I know Benji still does have close to 20-something% special ed now, right?
We are 25%, almost
5%.
26%.
So she can talk about that. But one of the things we kind of asked for was that we wanted to host some of the district special needs programs because we knew that having access to things like visual and performing arts could be very therapeutic and supportive for kids that aren't traditionally successful in other settings. And so we made sure that with those kids, we did a lot of mainstreaming. And so we wound up, by the time I left, we had 3 special day classes on campus. And Benji will talk a little bit more about the configuration. But master schedule was huge. In terms of performance assessment, we had our students every year do student-led conferences, even our little babies, our little kindergarten, our little 5- and 6-year-olds. We worked with them and they were able to lead their families through their year of learning, their goals, their reflections, their celebrations. And that rolled up eventually into every grade level having a grade level show that culminated in some of their big, deeper learnings throughout the year. So it might have been a performance, it could have been a musical, but every grade level collaboratively designed a grade level performance every year. And then we would have our 5th grade exhibition of learning so that it showed their growth over their full time at Vista Academy. And you can see a few photos here of some of the projects that students had completed. Every student, when they do their exhibition of learning, has a mentor, or a group of students will have a mentor. And so that's another way for them to tap into folks that are not just their teacher. Benji, would you want to add a little bit more about exhibition?
Yeah, so it's definitely evolved. So very similar to what Katina was just sharing. We have a very large campus. And part of that campus, we're the only elementary that has a gymnasium on our campus. It's called the Linda Road Center. It's a collaborative piece of property between the city of Vista and Vista Unified. And so we have a gymnasium that becomes our exhibition place. So you'll see in the pictures just all of the students, and they are, presenting to our community, to district representatives, to community members, and to their parents and each other, their projects. And they're all kind of just really centralized around the United Nations Sustainable Goals, which is central to the International Baccalaureate Primary Years Program as the 5th grade capstone project. And so students get to actually, they get to choose their mentors now, they get to choose their projects now that are, based on those United Nations Sustainable Goals. And then every certificated staff member mentors at least one group of 5th grade students. So it's that idea of they're all of our students. And so even if you're a kindergarten teacher, you will take on a group of 5th grade students that is in an area that you feel comfortable, mentoring them, and you meet with them every single week. So we build that into our collaboration time, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, and the structure for that, because it has some similarities, but definitely some changes. And so then the students then present to their families, and they have to do an art component because we are a visual and performing arts school. So our art specialists, they work with all of the 5th graders as well to, create like an art project that is central to whatever they're learning about, whether it's homelessness or whether it's poverty or whether it's gender inclusion and identity. So we do tackle even those difficult subjects here based on, if that's something that a student is really passionate about. And then they also have to take action with it. So that's another component of IB, is taking action. So it's not just you're going to learn something and then you're just going to I'm going to, paint a little painting and do a little research paper, but I'm actually going to, present about it and I'm going to do something with it. So if you'll see up there in the right-hand corner of this slide, these are students that were studying about the ocean and ocean pollution and things like that. And so they actually took a trip on our public transportation, the Sprinter and the coaster, to Oceanside and did a beach cleanup day during the school day as one of their kind of learning study trips, which was their taking action. So, which was awesome because some of our students really have never done that before. So it was pretty awesome. So, but they have to take action. So whether it's raising money or visiting, a homeless, facility where they're, giving them socks or they're giving them soaps and deodorants. And I mean, it looks so different depending on each group, but taking action is part of that. So it's a pretty powerful event. It usually happens in April and May, right around open house time. So it's awesome.
Thanks, Benji. We also just ensured that we were taking a data-informed approach. We're talking a lot about kind of this authentic learning and taking action, visual and performing arts, where they were able to do a lot of the kind of like hands-on learning. Our kids also couldn't read. And so, we knew that that was an area that we needed to tackle. And so one of the things we did, not even in year 1 or 2, because we knew we were still kind of in this stabilization. We are training our teachers on what we think needs to happen in order to be an IB school. So I think about year 3, worked with the leadership team, and we came up with a wildly important goal. And we came up with instructional agreements, and we talked about how we were going to use formative data, and we were going to do regular tracking to make sure that we could actually see change happening long before standardized test scores were coming out. And so one of the things we did with the master schedule was we carved out the whole first probably 90 minutes of the day, 4 days a week, and we called it team time. And across the campus, we regrouped kids based on assessments, their reading levels, and we did small group reading instruction for 90 minutes. And it was kind of an all hands on deck approach where I sometimes ran a reading group, Benji ran a reading group, the magnet coordinator, the instructional aides were pushed in with the neediest populations. The psychologist was reading with kids. everybody that was employed at the school site had a role to play in that 90 minutes of really intentionally focusing on literacy. And every week with the instructional agreements during the teacher collaboration time, the teaching team had to reflect. Did we stick to those instructional agreements? What worked? Where did I get stuck? If I didn't stick to them, what was I going to change and do differently? So formatively, every week we were looking at data. I called it our scoreboard. And I would analyze it. I would put it in the staff lounge, in the bathroom, in the office, everywhere, so that we could keep track and see how were our kids progressing. And this is just one snapshot where you can see that with that intentional focus, we saw some really great gains in reading performance. And, in our kinder and first grade, where you can see that almost every child was able to move to, grade level or above material, was a huge celebration. And so it's not just about what sometimes people say, like, oh, the fluffy things, with the visual performing arts. There was an intentional focus on academics, and in particular, we knew that kids would have a really hard time doing authentic personalized learning if they weren't literate. And finally, over those many years of journey, we've continued to just crystallize what we felt were the essential core elements of the school program, and had a vision to be the model in San Diego County of innovative arts integration and intercultural understanding. Our kiddos thrived, and there's a lot of success stories where we had students that were coming probably to our campus because it was the closest school to where they lived, and so they weren't necessarily interested in visual and performing arts. But through time and care and patience, some of those kiddos that were maybe like more hands-off, didn't want to engage or participate, just blossomed and thrived. And the impact it had on students with speech disabilities was tremendous. The opportunity for them to use language across so many different settings in really creative ways was super profound. So the metrics that we use to show that we were successful wasn't just standardized test scores, which we know are important, but through lots of surveys and other artifacts and ways to measure the impact of what was happening with our kids and with our families. And almost 8 years later, I was fortunate to think about how I wanted to impact kind of the learner-centered movement, and was able to join our organization, Learner-Centered Collaborative, almost 8 years later. And it was really important for me that there be somebody that kind of stepped in as I was leaving, that understood the blood, sweat, and tears and the journey that the school had been on. And Benji was my amazing AP. And so we were able to work really closely with district leadership, and they saw the value in ensuring that there was that continuity, and she's been the proud principal ever since. So Benji, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Katina. I know, I cannot believe it, but it's actually going on 12 years here at Vista Academy for me. 3.5 years as the assistant principal, working alongside Katina, and now I guess almost finishing up 8 years as the principal. I love my job 90 to 95% of the time. And I tell everybody, if you can love your job at least 80% of the time, you are in the right spot. And so, I do love coming to work 90 to 95% of the time. So I would say I'm in the right spot, but and that's just because I was mentored and groomed to be a principal by Katina. And the one thing that I always tell everybody, I've told it to all of my, my current assistant principal and previous assistant principals, is that Katina created a culture where she never, ever treated me like I was someone less than her based on my position, but I was always a partner. And when we can really engage all of our people as you're all part of this puzzle and we're all working together, and it's not like, I'm better than you and you're better than, and I mean, whether it's new duties, whether it's custodians, whether it is even your parents that are coming in to give feedback, but to say we're all working together to do what's best for kids. that's huge. And that's what has made all the difference here at Vista Academy. And so, kind of continuing that tradition that she started has been, just such a huge pleasure. So just kind of going back to, the foundation where, the school was running really well. We had a lot of systems in place, between the master schedule, the collaboration schedule, and all of our teams. We had some pretty high performing teams, but as you know, from year to year, schools change and our world changes. So if you think about a year and a half into actually my first year, after just only 6 months, I no longer had an assistant principal. They took my assistant principal away. I was pretty much on my own for an entire year running, a school of 600 with special education programs, with the autism program. It was really challenging. And then I got a 50% assistant principal back about a year and a half after that. And then we'll just say the pandemic hit. And so it pretty much, I feel like you're on this board game and you're almost to the end and you're like, oh, I've almost arrived and we've got this great system. And then now we've got to send all the kids home and switch to virtual. And then we brought half of the kids back for a couple years. And everything that you wanted to do with small groups and innovation and everything, just pretty much you had to throw out the window, sort of. And you did the best you could with it. So I would say the last probably 3 years has really been rebuilding back the systems and the procedures and the things that we were doing that were amazing and what was best for kids, rebuilding them back in, because everything became a lot more traditional, unfortunately. And so along with that has come, what we call initiatives. And a lot of these things that we have in the state of California are amazing. I mean, when you talk about MTSS and the multi-tiered systems of supports, and you talk about universal design for learning, and of course, we still were the IB primary years program. And so we had to really kind of take all of those things and say, who are we again as Vista Academy of Visual and Performing Arts coming out of this pandemic? And so we kind of created a visual. So you saw the house that Katina showed, which was kind of this visual of like, how does all this fit together? So, kind of overarching is this multi-tiered systems of supports, which supports, the behavioral, the academic, and the social emotional components of every child. And so within that, Vista Unified created the framework for the future, which is all of it was kind of, they turned the graduate portrait into a learner portrait, and then we had an adult portrait, which then guides how we treat all of our students and our community, as well as a systems portrait. So we kind of had to kind of encapsulate that into a structure for the school. So this visual just kind of shows that with being, multi-tiered systems of supports kind of as the overarching plan of action. And then within that, underneath that, we have our learner portrait, which is, creating kind and compassionate learners that are innovative, they're inclusive, they're equity centered. And then also guiding us is our learning engine, the IB primary years program. And this year we are up for our second reauthorization. We call it evaluation now. So we did our self-study last year. So this will mark our year 10 as being an authorized IB World School. So that's coming in the spring. And so we're really prepared for that. We're actually really prepared. So I feel really good about it. The last one we actually did virtually, just so you know. It was done through iPads. We had to walk through with the IB organization and show them with iPads. So all of us were armed with iPads. That was during the pandemic. It was awful. So I still have a little bit of PTSD from COVID. So hopefully never again. So this visual just kind of breaks down like, what are we doing academically? What are we doing behaviorally? And what are we doing social emotionally? We are also, we are a year 3 PBIS school, so positive behavior intervention systems. And that's been a huge, it's been positive. We've just really, it's not something new, it's something we've integrated right into our International Baccalaureate. We're also a California community school, so we get extra funding with additional staff, as well as incorporating a lot of like holistic type of resources for our community and our students. But, you know, we're still a public school. We still follow the Common Core standards. But we still go back to kind of those foundational things that Katina was talking about. So I'll go into that a little bit more. So with our master schedule, so when we look at our master schedule, what has stayed the same and what has changed is we still have weekly collaboration with every single team. What has changed now since kind of 8 years and 10 years ago is all of our special education joins the grade level team that is collaborating at that time. So our learning center teachers that are teaching our pull-out students that are mild level special education, as well as our Santa Fe teachers, they join the collaboration of the grade level team. And so they're collaborating and sharing together with the grade level team every single week. So an hour and a half is spent during collaboration, and they are working really closely with our IB coordinator and administration. And we are looking at our goals, we're looking at data, we are doing unit planning, we're looking at assessments, we are planning our grade level shows, which we still have, and they need to be based off of the units of inquiry. So we map those out across the year on a calendar so that there isn't a lot of overlap. And that's, in addition, we have our after school conservatories and in all of the arts, as well as we have sports now and board games and you name it. Like there's so many different opportunities. We looked at it and we had, I want to say it was like 25 to 30 conservatories last year that were offered to students just because we had additional funding from the state of California for enrichment. And we had volleyball, we had soccer, we had board games, we had crocheting, we had, of course, the music and all of, the visual and performing arts as well. We also have the first elementary mariachi that started last year, which is pretty awesome as well. So that's everything that we offer students, which is a lot. But back to that collaboration component, we do nano PDs in every collaboration now. So whether we're focusing in on phonics instruction or learning how to dive deeper into inquiry, those collaborations are central to our master schedule. And while the teachers are collaborating, our students are rotating between music, visual art, dance, drama, and Spanish. And then we also have a digital arts, which is kind of a standalone as well. So we have 5 full-time specialists. So we're very grateful for the funding that has been provided to us to continue those magnet specialists as well. In addition to the master schedule, we also have a pretty tight but loose. And I'll actually have you, Brittany, I'll have you kind of go back to that. If you look over to the right, the second grade schedule. So all of our grade levels have to submit an instructional schedule, but we have guidelines and we have a lot of, and this is the loose part, is within those guidelines, be innovative and try new things. But yet during certain times, there are certain things that you will be doing, okay, that kind of guide your innovation. And kind of that loose component. So with the second grade schedule, so this is just an example of last year's, but this year's will look very similar. We had a huge need coming out of the pandemic for students to really grow socially and emotionally, as we all know. And so we have site-wide, school-wide SEL time. So during that time, teachers can go over our school-wide expectations, which are the Bulldog Way. They can go over the attributes of the IB learner profile. They can discuss things unique to their class. They can talk about trauma. They can talk about biases. They can talk about a reflection from what happened at recess or lunch the day before. It's a way for them to connect with their students and really grow them socially, emotionally, and set the foundation for a positive day. We have that for this coming year as well. We started it last year. And then, of course, we are 40% English learners. So it has dropped from the 80% when Katina opened the school to 40%, which does show the increased diversity at our school. And so that is no interruptions. Our English learners get designated ELD time during that portion of the morning. And it's really impacted our designated ELD instruction to really make sure that teachers understand the purpose of it. And we do designated ELD walks pretty regularly, almost every other week. And we give feedback to teachers on their English learner instruction to make sure that our students are reclassifying. We did reclassify almost 50 students last school year. And so we were way above the district average for reclassification. And I do think that that is, a result of the IB program, a result of the hard work of an amazing team that has really been focused in on growing our English learners so that they are English proficient. And then you'll see that even within our content areas, we of course integrate IB and the arts into those areas, but we do want to see, our tier 1 and tier 2 instruction as well. And so we've had a huge focus in on writing and tier 2 instruction the last couple of years, and that will continue this year. So our theme for this year is From Foundation to Flight, meaning that we've been working on these things for the past 3 years to really dial in our phonics instruction, our ELA instruction, our writing, and now we are zeroing in on math instruction as well. So it's just really like, okay, let's take what we've learned and let's just fly with it. So I don't feel like we're really building the plane anymore, but we were when we were building this school. But now it's like, okay, let's get it off the ground a little bit more. And so we've also seen, we had a jump. I'm looking just as a small component, but an important one. Our CAS scores have shown some growth. We were about, I think we're about a 7% increase in math and a 9% in English language arts school-wide from last school year. So super excited about that. So we'll kind of move on to the next little component I'll share with you. So our unit planners look a little bit different, and our POI looks a little bit different. We've kind of evolved and grown with the IB primary years program and their requirements. But if you'll kind of look, the first little section on the left, if you look at that above the red bar, that looks very similar to what Katina was showing you with our IB unit planners. But we know that as students, as they grow and as they change and as our demographics change and as our student populations change, and even as our teachers are changing and growing, that our units are going to change and grow with the students. And so we really kind of have this yearly evolution where we're looking at those units and saying, is this what's working and is this what's best for kids? So we're tying all the standards together, the Common Core standards, as well as the visual and performing arts standards. And then we're looking through these transdisciplinary themes. So there's actually 6 of them. However, for kindergarten, we a couple years ago reduced them to 4, and that was through IB. They just felt that it was needed to go a little bit deeper around 4 of the transdisciplinary themes, which are like, where we are in place and time, how we express ourselves, things like that. They're central to the IB program, and they run from K through 5th grade. And so we've added to those unit planners, and we've added in, like components of inquiry, which was what we had found out 5 years ago when we did our last evaluation, was that we needed to dive a little bit deeper into inquiry. And so we do a lot of what we call tuning in, finding out, sorting out, going further, and then making conclusions with the students. So it's not just about having a wonder wall, but having the students going back to those wonder walls and saying, okay, how do I find this information? How do I learn from what the teacher's telling me, but where else could I go to find information on things that I'm interested in, and what's relevant, and just really connecting the students with their experiences and their previous learning. And so we are all GLAD certified as well. We have one of the highest percentage, well, maybe not. Last year we had one of the highest percentages of GLAD certified teachers in the district, but we have had quite a big turnover in staff because we had a mass retirement last year in Vista Unified. So we have a lot of new teachers coming on board that we'll have to onboard onto GLAD. But GLAD has really impacted not just our English learners, but also our other students that are not English learners. So that's been amazing with GLAD certification. So just kind of going a lot deeper, and then you'll also kind of see over on the right-hand side how we still continue to plan together with our art specialists. So we didn't want them to be on their own. They're teaching the kids. We don't know what's going on. So we visit their classrooms. They plan regularly with our grade levels on Monday afternoons. And so that's in addition to the collaboration time. And it's been great because then they can say, okay, this is what's being taught in the classrooms. This is how I can reinforce it in the dance room or in the drama room or in the Spanish room or, and things like that. So it can go both ways. So that's huge because we know that students learn better when it's not in isolation.
Wow. I think this is the last one, Benji, and then we're going to
Yeah,
head
this is last one. Okay. And so a couple additional things that I talked a little bit about already was that collaboration looks a little bit different than when we first started this transformation of Vista Academy. And even since, prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, and now after the pandemic. So we have a lot of resources. This is just an example of one of our collaboration agendas. And so, we always have, of course, what we're looking at as far as the unit, and then we do nano PDs based on whatever the teacher's needs are, based on whatever our school goals are. And, one of our focus is just really removing barriers for all of our students. And do we know them all really well? And know what their needs are, just social, emotionally, as well as academically. Sorry, there's a bug flying by me right now. Anyway, and then we also have incorporated a coaching model. So we have quite a few TOSAs on our campus. So those are teachers on special assignment. So we have our IB coordinator, which is full-time. We have an EL resource teacher. We have a learning support teacher. We also have a special education lead. And so, based on data and based on whatever teacher needs are, our IB coordinator or even a TOSA might go into a classroom and suggest, hey, I can come in and I can co-teach with you. I can co-plan with you. I can observe you. I can give you feedback. And so we have a full coaching menu, and we do have a document that kind of tracks it, that's confidential. And then we use this coaching menu throughout the year, whether it's for new teachers, whether it's for teachers that need support with small groups, whether it's for teachers that need support with classroom management. Whatever the need is, we have a variety of people that can support them at a really high level. But really meet them wherever they are. So these are just, a few of the components that have kind of grown and changed from the foundation of Vista Academy. But we're excited about where we're going. We've grown a lot. We're a school of now 750. We still house the Santa Fe autism program. We have 3 full classes, and we do mainstreaming and incorporate those students into the grade level shows, into after school conservatories. And so it's a very inclusive campus. It was when Katina was the principal. It has remained that way through my principalship. And my hope is that it will always be like that, because we have a very positive reputation in the district, and even in North County, for supporting special education, as well as arts and arts integration. So it's a great place to be.
Yay.
Well done, Benji. Thank you, Katina and Benji. I don't know about everyone else, but holy moly, that was so much to take in, such rich examples. If you're like me, you just need to process for a moment. So we're going to hop into breakout rooms. I'll open them in just a second. And your task in the breakout rooms is, first and foremost, introduce yourself, because you might be with new folks this time. And then explore some of the big moves that Katina and Benji made, and that you could make. There is a resource that we're going to put in the chat. It is our Big Moves Bank. So I'd love for you to click through. What big moves feel appealing to you? And also, as you're making meaning of these big moves, you might think of some additional questions that you want to ask the panelists. So we'll have about 5 minutes when we come back from breakout rooms to pepper them with any big questions. And if there's any that we're not able to get to, we can definitely follow up via email afterwards. So with that, I want you to sneak peek the workbook slide where you can capture notes. So Katina, if you'll click in the workbook, which Paul's going to put in the chat right now. Katina, if you'll move through 2 slides, please.
All right.
No problem. All right, so you are going to see your breakout room slide. So you'll look for your room number, and then you just have a space to collectively take notes. And Katina, if you go back one, you will see the links to all the different big moves pages. So again, these are lots of examples and different strategies that you can implement to, start your school redesign or continue your school redesign journey. So with that, let me quickly recap. The webinar workbook is in the chat. You will open it up, take a look at the Big Moves pages, and we'll come back together in about 12 minutes. See you all soon. And I am going to share some upcoming dates. Let me put my screen show back up for you. So as a reminder, we've still got 2 more Mondays worth of sessions. So please join us for part 3 and part 4. And don't forget, in September, we are exploring the opportunity of pulling together a group of folks from around the country to go visit an innovative school that's engaged in school design. So if that's something of interest, please feel free to reach out to us. And also, if you will be at the Full Scale Institute, formerly known as Aurora Institute in New Orleans, at the end of October, come say hi. We'd love to see you there. And with that, I'd love to get some feedback really quickly before we hang up. I'm just going to launch this very, very quick poll, and then we'll wind down for the day. So with that, I'd just love to hear how the session is working for you so far. Right, giant kudos to the 5 of 10 of you who've already answered. Thank you so, so much. We look forward to seeing you again next week. This was officially your exit ticket for the session. We'll see you next Monday. Thanks, Katina. Thanks, Benji.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
You too. Bye. Good to see you, Benji.
Good to see you too.
All right. Bye.